everyone. My name is Raelan. I am back here with Sam. I don't know if you saw, he was on the channel recently sharing his really incredible story of full recovery from chronic fatigue syndrome, or ME/CFS. He had a really long and trying journey with this, but did manage to fully get his health back. So if you haven't seen that yet, I encourage you to check it out. I'll link it up here on the screen somewhere if you want to give it a watch. And meditation was a massive part of Sam's recovery. So he's agreed to do a part 2 to that video so he could talk a bit more about what that type of meditation is and just help people understand the benefits of it. So hello again, Sam.
Hello. Thanks for having me for part 2.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. Instead of me trying to introduce the type of meditation that you do, why don't I just hand it over to you? What is your specialty? And tell us a bit about it.
So there are lots of different forms of meditation. And I think I want to start out just by explaining that there are meditation practices for people like us, which are termed householders. And a householder is someone who has a relationship, has possessions, and they live in the world that we do in this modern sort of Western society or other places. And we often think that meditation is surrounded by people who live a monastic lifestyle, or they're in an ashram, or they're at a Buddhist temple. But it was never actually for those types of people. So meditation was always for people like us, householders, and not the monastic lifestyles. It just so happens that 1500 years ago, the monastic way of life started to come in, and it was a lot easier to practice meditation when you don't have all the stresses around you in the world. And so that's one thing to look at, is that meditation was always meant for people like us. It wasn't designed for people who wanted to go and hide away in a cave. It was about living. It's about being and exploring this world and evolving in it and learning. And it's a great tool for that. So that's the first sort of part that I wanted to sort of explain. The second part is there are lots of different forms of meditation. Some are easy. Some require a lot of concentration and a large amount of time to meditate as well. I found that the practice that I teach, which is called Vedic meditation, there's another name that goes by in transcendental meditation. It's very similar. It's almost the same as that, almost the same. But the fundamentals are there. As a teacher, I pass on a mantra, and a mantra means mind vehicle. It's what enables the mind to go away from the thinking state, from where we are right now in what we call the relative state of consciousness, where with our eyes open, we are in the relative. We're seeing, we're engaging, we're living in this state. And when I give someone their mantra, their personalized mantra, so there are various mantras out there that we're trained to pass on, and some people might have the same one, but you could have a room of 10 or 15 people, and some of them might have the same, but the majority will have a different one. So not everyone has the same mantra. And these mantras are designed to take you from that busy sort of surface level of the ocean, let's just say, where our thoughts are bubbling up and going with the waves. And the mantra is designed to take us down away from that into a very deep state, into the bottom of the ocean. And we call this the absolute. And the absolute is this pure bliss relaxation sort of state. Everything's very calm down there. And fundamentally, that's where we're going to start to heal. That's where we're going to start to feel better, is when we put ourselves into that state more and more and more.
In your experience, for people maybe who haven't seen your first video, just why is it important to be at that state, and how is that related to health, or how is it related to your health recovery journey?
So I'll give you a little bit of background, and I'm sure some of your viewers and listeners will know some of this. But fundamentally, it comes down to our nervous system, our central nervous system, and our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system. Because the world that we live in is very busy and it's full of stress and full of trauma. These traumas can be any degree. They can be very small things that we wouldn't expect to be a proper trauma. And when these things build up, our nervous system is becoming a little bit more blocked. And so we end up activating a part of our brain a lot more of the time called the amygdala. And the amygdala is our stress management system. And that's putting us into sympathetic dominance, our fight or flight response. The sympathetic nervous system is our fight or flight response. It's our survival response. Now, that means that the majority of the time, we're not able to get into this rest and digest state, which is what's called the parasympathetic nervous system. And we're spending a large proportion of our day in the sympathetic. Now, when someone becomes chronically stressed, it's very difficult for them to come out of that. Now, there is another theory that's out there by a doctor called Dr. Stephen Porges, and you may have heard of this before. It's called the polyvagal theory. And it's how we have two parts of the vagus nerve, which the back of the brain goes down to it's called the wandering nerve. It goes to the different organs around the body. And when someone is chronically stressed, that means that their sympathetic nervous system it's almost like it realizes that it can't do anything more. It goes beyond that. It realizes that our survival mechanism is not enough to combat or respond to the stresses, the amount of stresses that come into our nervous system, into our awareness. And so we activate something else called the shutdown. We call it freeze, shutdown, which I'm sure a lot of people with chronic fatigue syndrome are experiencing. And this shutdown is basically when our sympathetic state cannot function anymore, and we activate another part of the parasympathetic, which is our freeze state. It's effectively playing dead. If you imagine a lion chasing a gazelle, and the lion gets the gazelle, and the gazelle freezes, it realizes that if it continues to fight back, that it's got a high percentage chance to die. And if it freezes and plays dead, then it's got a higher chance of survival because the lion will think that it's dead, so it doesn't have to keep trying to bite it. And so the lion might put the gazelle down, and the gazelle might see its opportunity to run away. So we have these mechanisms, and I think what I found in my journey was that I was going into this state of freeze the whole time. And I couldn't feel safe. Nothing felt safe. And my sympathetic was just completely worn out. My body's resources were completely worn out. Until I started to meditate. And my meditation, we start to activate our parasympathetic state, our rest and digest. Within 2 to 3 minutes of meditating, you start to activate this. So you put yourself in this state on purpose, twice a day for 20 minutes each time. So it's basically 40 minutes of meditation a day, one in the morning or one in the evening or one at lunchtime, whatever works for you really. And it's all about increasing the amount of time that you can be in the parasympathetic to allow the body to heal. And now when we allow ourselves to do that, we can actually come into this perfect point called homeostasis. Homeostasis is the place that we want to be in all the time, effectively. It means that we can go into the sympathetic at will, whenever we need to, whenever our life is in threat, or we can go into parasympathetic when we need to heal, to be in this balance point. And eventually, after we've done all the healing we need to do, we'll start to hang around in this homeostasis part of our nervous system. So we're not using up resources unnecessarily. And that's what meditation is going to start to do. At the beginning of someone's journey, you're going to start to activate your parasympathetic. Take yourself out of that fight or flight and feeling unsafe, and start to, out of fear. Effectively, it's fear. You may not feel fearful, but your body does. Your body is responding to the work emails or the financial issues or the family troubles, and it's responding in a fearful way. The body thinks it's being attacked. Okay? And it's all about coming into safety. What can you do to bring out the safety and to encourage more of that, so the body can then find its whole, go into this hibernation and recover? Because at the moment, a lot of people can't. And it makes a big difference when you allow your body to do that. And that's what I train people to do, is to use this mantra to calm their nervous system down, to go into the parasympathetic, to dip into this absolute state. And then we start to take more of this absolute state out with us into our everyday life. And we call this part integration. We're starting to integrate absolute back into our relative state. The practice in itself is probably the easiest form of meditation there is, which is why I love it so much, because you really can't go wrong with it. If you follow the instructions on the course, and it's not a hard one to follow, then you can't go wrong with it. And your body, your brain will naturally go into this state. We think that this is a new sort of mechanism or tool. It's not. It's just it is a tool that's a vehicle that's allowing ourselves to get into this really relaxed state, this very natural state that we've just forgotten how to get to. And it's really reminding the brain how to get there. And so in time, we become very good at getting there very quickly, very easily. But at the beginning of a meditation practice, we might have quite a few thoughts. And thoughts are a very big part of this practice. And we think that we're trained, or there's a stigma around meditating and having thoughts coming through our mind. And because we're thinking, we're not meditating. It's completely untrue. We are meditating absolutely every time we do this practice in the way that we teach.
That you explained that very well. Thank you so much for that. That really helped me understand it better. I'm sure it helped other people as well. One of the reasons we talked about doing this, and I was excited to have you back, is virtually every person that I've talked to who's recovered from ME/CFS or a similar condition has mentioned meditation as a part of their journey in some capacity. And virtually all of them also said things just like you said, like, I never would have thought that I would even consider doing this. Like, I wasn't that type of person, or it didn't sound like it wasn't what I was looking for. So just to help people, make it a bit more accessible, explain a bit more why it helps, demystify it a bit. And if it can help more people, if we can get others to encourage, or to think about trying this sooner rather than later, if we could help more people, that would be amazing.
Yeah. So like I said earlier, this practice puts you into safety. And when the body and the mind is feeling safe, it will start to heal. But if it's not feeling safe, if it's in the sympathetic state, then it's very difficult for it to heal and recover properly. So our immune system and our digestive systems, when we're in our sympathetic state, are being shut down. They are not operating, and we're going through hopefully coming through a massive global crisis with COVID. And a lot of people were fearful about this. They were feeling the fear, whether through media or all sorts of other things. Their nervous system was in a state of fear. And when our nervous systems are in a state of fear, our immune system is not working as well as it could do, because it's still thinking it's surviving a threat. If you had a tiger in the room with you, do you think the body's going to start to work, get rid of all the viruses in the body? Or do you think it's going to start activating our limbs so that we can fight this thing or run away from it? And we're going in that to not even try to over exaggerate it. We are in that state of thinking we're in a room with a tiger the whole time. And when we're in that, we can't heal. And when we're in it for too long, our long-term bodily functions will stop working as well as they could do. We see long-term illnesses. How many people in their 70s, 80s, 90s are getting away with not having any prescriptions from a doctor? There is, this accumulation of stress that we experience throughout our lives makes a huge difference to the later us. And we need to start to take the pressure away from this, you could call it a pressure cooker of stress. And meditation starts to relieve that pressure. And it will relieve it if we start to then work with our environment at the same time. We start to work with the things that are stressing us out, and we deal with them, and we address them, and we move on from them. I see meditation as the foundational step for anybody's healing recovery. It is a necessary part to have in your life, because you won't heal unless you feel safe. And what I teach is a way to get you back into safety effectively. Get the mind calm down, and you start to dip into this new state of consciousness that you wouldn't have had. Not many people get to experience this. The absolute state, transcendence, is we call it the fourth state of consciousness, is a whole new experience entirely. It is a thoughtless place. There is no ability to think in there. So a lot of people think that they've transcended because they can, at the beginning, they think that they've gone into this and they're feeling all light and fuzzy. But they've actually, when they had that thought, they're not in it anymore. And so where we go to in this state is just, it's very difficult to explain. But you can start to realize that you've gone somewhere once you come out of it. The great part of this is you learn it once. Okay, everyone's heard of the Headspace and the Calm apps. They're all out there. They make meditation very accessible. But a lot of people that come to see me have sort of exhausted those apps, and they're looking for something a little bit more, because those apps do fundamentally provide a bit of a ceiling. You know, they've done a great job. They've got people interested in meditation, but then they want to see how much further they can go with it. You know, what can they really do? Can they unlock their potential? And this practice, there is no ceiling. It is literally you meditate in the way that we talk about in the course, which is effectively twice a day. You know, in the perfect world, we'd meditate twice a day. We'd sit in a really comfortable chair. Okay, there is no need to sit upright on a cushion on the floor or in front of a waterfall or anything like that. It is, or we don't have to sit cross-legged either. We just sit comfortably in our chair. We can have our hands in our lap. We have our feet on the floor, and make sure our back is supported as well. And we allow this mantra, we start to think it in our mind, and we allow the mantra just to work. The power is in the mantra. So it's really a very simple practice. And on the course, the different days have different objectives. So the first session is to go through, I actually perform this lovely little puja ceremony where it's like a gratification ceremony in Sanskrit, which is about 5 minutes long. So it's basically me singing or attempting to sing in Sanskrit. And I've got a candle, I've got some incense, I've got some fruit, and I've got some flowers. And we're honoring the tradition. We're honoring the teachers that have passed this down over thousands of years. It is a technique that has been around for a very, very long time. So it's not a new app. It's not something that's just been found and created. It's something that's been tried and tested throughout a very, very long time. And I was lucky enough to be taught, a direct line from all these teachers. And we pass this knowledge on and we show people how to do it for themselves. It actually empowers people because they're not relying on anything else. I give them a tool, I give them their mantra, I show them how to use it, and they can go off and meditate by themselves for the rest of their lives. They don't need anything else. That's one of the biggest things that I liked about this practice. I didn't have to keep going back for another course, another session to learn how to meditate. You learn from the very first session. I take you through the steps, I guide you through it for the first one, and then I send you home with a little bit of homework, very easy homework. And it's really just to meditate by yourself. And then you come back the next day and we talk about the mechanics, when to do it, where to do it. You realize that you can meditate absolutely anywhere you like, as long as you're comfortable. You can be in a club, you can be in a taxi, on the tube, you can be on an aeroplane. You can meditate anywhere you like, as long as you're comfortable. It's a really big part. And it is the most accessible forms of meditation you can do, because it means that you can be tactical. So if you've got a big work presentation coming up or something, you can meditate before the presentation. It makes you gets you calmer. So you go into that presentation and you're like, well, what was all the nerves for? So you perform better. There's so many different reasons for doing it. But largely, it's to make us feel safe. It's to bring us back into this parasympathetic state, to give ourselves the option to go into that state, to allow us to. And then, so the second day is kind of the mechanics, how to do it, when, where, why you should do it, and how to do it properly. And then the third session, we start to talk about stress and the effects of stress, the different forms of stress. And we realize that we have this huge amount of chronic background stress that's in our nervous system, always circulating around, and it's always there, and it's very difficult to get rid of. And it means that we're very reactive in all sorts of situations. It's like a knee-jerk reaction to everything that happens to us. There's never that time to pause and assess and see a situation from a different vantage point. And so we're always very reactive. What this does is it gives you that whole different perspective. And so you're less reactive and you start responding, or even seeing things before they happen, in a sense. You can see some patterns and you can see where something's going. So yeah, and then the fourth session, we start to talk about the different states of consciousness, what the meditation's allowing you to experience in transcendence and in the absolute, and then what you can expect to experience in the future. We start to realize that meditation was never for these symptoms. It's just part of meditation is that we have to purify our nervous system. We have to clear up our hard drive. It's a bit like having viruses on a computer, and we've got so many files on our hard drive that it just starts to slow down. It doesn't work as well as it can do. And with meditation, it's kind of going in and cleaning up that C drive, cleaning up disk defragmentation. We're clearing it all up and we're freeing it up so then it can perform at its absolute best. So there are different stages. And at the beginning, I was on a healing journey. I wanted to recover from my illness, chronic fatigue syndrome. And then you start to go in, okay, this is now opening up more things. And I'm actually I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And for me, it's to show people how to meditate and to improve their lives and everything like that too. And then you just start to see how having one person can meditate can actually affect the people around them. It's not just for the individual. It starts to become a little bit more spiritual. And this is coming from someone who was probably the biggest atheist you could expect, to come into a sense of, I feel like there is a lot more going on around us than I can actually see. And you start to become more aware of this thing, and tapping into transcendence expands that. So we stop going from a very selfish element of, I'm just thinking about me and my recovery, to there's another step afterwards. So it's not just about becoming healthy again. It's like, what else can I do for the world? How can I contribute? So it really takes, me before, I was probably just thinking about myself and probably quite selfish, to getting on well, to then going, oh, I feel better. What else can I do? There's a reason why I had this journey and this recovery, to get over something that I was told by a doctor that it was pretty difficult to do, and not many people get to do it. The core foundation for me was meditation. And then when you do other things, if you ever go and see a therapist or anything like that to work through some issues that you've had in the past or you're experiencing currently right now, when you have a meditation practice, it just opens you up. It's like, oh, okay, so you're going to get more out of those therapy sessions. You're going to get more out of those other sessions that you do with another specialist. It's once you have these foundations, what you start to build above that starts to become reinforced and a higher quality. So I find that it will speed up the process. So I feel very strongly about having a meditation practice. And, the type of technique that I teach isn't the cheapest, because it's not a repeat type of class. It's something, that you have to give up a little bit of something to receive the technique. And then when you do that, you take it more seriously. That's how we've seen. In the past, 100 years ago, people would have trekked for 5 or 6 days to go and see a teacher in the Himalayas. And they would have then spent maybe another 3 or 4 days with that teacher. And that teacher would assess whether they're ready to do a meditation or not, whether they can be taught. And so for now for the exchange is money. Before, it was an exchange of bringing some fruit and flowers for that teacher, or some white cloth as well, and making that journey. And so there is an element with this practice of giving something up. I think where if we ever have anything free, we don't take it as seriously. So yeah, it seems a little bit expensive, and I try to make it as accessible as possible. And that's often the thing that puts people off. And then the other thing is that you have to meditate twice a day for 20 minutes. How can I do that for 20 minutes? How can I do that? And you start doing it, it's like, okay, time really flies when you start meditating.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those things. It's you've got to see it and try it to believe it, in a sense, because we all think that we can't do it at the beginning, and it's very easy to do There's nobody that can't do it. It's just one of those things.
I love that you're giving me permission to sit in a comfortable chair. I always do, but I always have a little bit of guilt. I always sit on my couch or in a big, I work in a co-working space during the day, and I have this big cushy chair that I go sit in to do meditation. And such a small thing, but I get very uncomfortable sitting on the floor with my back straight. And that was always such a barrier, such a simple thing for me, but such a barrier to meditation for me. Cause I'm like, my whole body starts to ache. Like, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah, exactly. And then the mind goes to that discomfort.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult for the mantra then to come in, because your attention's been taken away from the mantra, and it's going to the discomfort that you're feeling in the body. So number one rule is to sit comfortably, to have no pain in the body.
Well, I can see how it can transform so many areas of your life. Like, even just talking to you, Sam, I mean, I'm in San Francisco, you're in Lisbon right now. We're almost on other sides of the planet, but yet I feel this energy off of you that when you're talking, it was just, my whole body just calms down. You know, it's just soothing just to even be in your presence, even though we're not even on the same side of the planet. So the way you talk about the ripple effect and how it can help others, I mean, I can see how it changes the energy that we put out into the world, and, our goals with how, what we want to achieve in the world. So yeah, I really like that.
So you have enough meditators in the world, you then start to have that ripple effect starts to go out more and more and more. Yeah.
So what do you think, I mean, aside from, the costs of meditation courses and whatnot, because I suspect the vast majority of people in this modern world, especially, in more westernized countries, don't meditate. What do you think some of the barriers are? What is holding people back from this catching on?
I think the time element, I think giving up the time to sit with yourself, to focus on yourself. I think a lot of people get caught up on social media and all of those things, and they're just wasting time effectively. Effectively meditation takes 3% of your day. It's 3%. It's a very small amount of your day. I do feel like cost is an element, because there's a feeling like this should be a lot cheaper, or this should be more accessible. And then, there's something about meditation where you feel like you should almost get it for free, in a sense.
Right.
The other thing is not feeling like you can do it. I think that's another big part. It's not going to work for me, so I'm not going to bother wasting that time. And most people in our society want things to happen quickly, and they want it to happen yesterday. And meditation doesn't work like that. It's a slow, long-term, results-driven practice. It is not a short-term fix. And when we start looking at it as a short-term fix, then we're setting ourselves up to fail. We have to start to look and effectively, being a meditation teacher and teaching my students, it becomes a non-negotiable part of your life. It's waking up and going to bed and effectively going to sleep, and not meditating in the day feels like you haven't brushed your teeth for today. It is one of those things that's probably more important than brushing your teeth, because it is brushing the teeth for the mind, allowing the mind to declutter. The reason we meditate twice a day is, number one, for a maintenance. So any stress that we take in from the day, we get to meditate and allow it to leave our body. We don't hold on to it anymore. Our nervous system's not holding on to it. We're allowing it to be processed out. Okay. The second meditation is for starting to work, now that we're on a maintenance level, we're starting to push out, starting to work on all the old rooted stress and trauma that we've inherited and we've accumulated in our childhood, and it's been building up in our nervous system. That's why we do it twice a day. One's for maintenance, and the other one is to start to remove this build-up of rubbish that we've been holding on to.
It's interesting to hear you explain it that way, because I've had a shift with meditation recently. I've gone through periods and I do it and I don't, and I do it and I don't. And I noticed recently that I just wasn't doing it at all. And it just became something on my to-do list every day that I had to do. And I kind of lost the buy-in, I think. Like I didn't think I was going to get enough value out of that time. I could get more value out of doing other things. But then when I just committed to it and I started to notice how much better I felt, it switched in my mind from this is something that I have to do to this is something that I get to do. Like it's a rewarding part of my day. Mm-hmm. And doing it twice a day, I found is really helpful as well. And my second one, and this is just, I don't know, maybe I read it somewhere, but to me, I just came up with it in my head because I've had a practice for years that before I finish my day, I reset the room. Like I go through the house and I put everything back where it's supposed to be. I want to start off the next day fresh and everything in its place. And then my end of the day meditation, I call it my reset the room. And it's my reminder, like I take the time to do that for my home. Why wouldn't I take the time to do that for this home? Which is far more important than the dishes being put away. So I suspect a lot of people just don't have the buy-in. And like you said, it's not immediate. It's not within 24 hours. It's changed your life. So you need, to be committed to it a bit. But yeah.
You'll generally feel some effects, but it won't be, those life-changing effects won't happen overnight.
Right.
It's a very easy, accessible practice to do anywhere you like. I'm surprised more people aren't doing it, but I think, we've just gone through a shift where how yoga is very in at the moment and doing yoga, and that's great. Yoga doesn't actually mean what we think it means. Yoga is like an umbrella term for meditation, breathwork, and asana, which is how we perceive yoga is actually asana, which is the posture, the movement part. Yoga is an umbrella term for all of those things. So the asana element, the yoga part, has been very well known and very trendy to do. And I think meditation, we're now getting to a point where that is starting to become more and more well known. And we start to see the benefits of it. The reason why people learn meditation is usually because they've been recommended by somebody. They know someone who's done it and they get recommended. It's very unlikely that someone will come and learn with me because they've just found me randomly on the website. It is usually validated through a recommendation through a friend, because it's worked for them, and the friend can validate their experience. They can go and they can actually see the difference in their friend, and that's how this kind of works. It's very difficult unless someone's just really interested in meditation and they do all the research and they're just heavily involved in researching it and wanting to find more and more. They just have this thirst for the knowledge. I have a few people like that, but generally it's always through referrals, recommendations.
Yeah, we need to normalize it more. It's not something that I hear my friends talking about, really. It's not, I might have people saying like, oh, hey, I know about this great yoga class, or have you done hot yoga? But no one's ever like, hey, what meditations did you do this week? Or it's just, I think that's another thing when it feels like nobody's doing it. It's like, why should I spend my time? So just talking about it more and bringing awareness to the benefits of it, hopefully, it can help. Mm-hmm. Well, this is amazing. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot from everything that you shared. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. If people wanted to get in touch with you or learn more about your course, how could they do that?
You can either use the Instagram handle, or you can go directly onto my website, which is Soma, S-O-M-A, -meditation.com. And you can then contact me through there. You can look at the courses. I tend to teach a group course, so once a month, where I'll have up to 10 people. Sometimes it's 5, sometimes it's 3, depends which month it is. And other than that, I teach private courses, and they're actually mostly in your side of the world. And so privates or group courses, more accessible in a group course environment. And it's actually, I'd say, more fun, more engaging, because you get to hear other people's experiences and you get to workshop what's going on, and everyone's in it for the similar reasons. So they're always really nice to do, and you actually make some lifelong friends along the way, which is nice. And then after someone learns from me, they can join my meditation, weekly group meditation. They always have access to me whenever, after they've done the course. There's no more payments or anything like that. You have access to these group courses once a week, just to keep you going, just to answer any questions that pop up in a meditation. It's really just to help galvanize the practice and to make sure there are no obstacles in someone's life.
That sounds incredible. I have a feeling you might see my name pop up on your sign-up sheet one day in the future. I'm wondering, just as we wrap up, because many of the people who subscribe to my channel are people who are facing chronic health challenges, which is something I know that you very much get. And a concern always for many of us is like, am I going to be able to manage this? What kind of time commitment is this? Is there any flexibility? So for someone who's facing chronic health problems, is this a feasible program for them to do?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about learning with a teacher over an app is that you get to speak to them. You get to have a conversation. You can explain your story a little bit. And that means that the teacher can give you a personalized routine, a structure. And generally it's 20 minutes twice a day. But 20 minutes can also be too much for someone. To meditate 20 minutes can actually be overwhelming because it's too much stress being released from the body. And this is actually something that will happen with me, is that I had to tone mine down a little bit. I had to go down to 15 minutes or 10 minutes just to build the practice up so I could get my body into a state where it wasn't becoming overwhelming with the amount of stress that's been released. The the most important thing with this practice is to make sure that your eyes open experience is improving. And if it's becoming overwhelmed by too much meditating, over meditating, it won't improve. It will become too overwhelming and it will put you off meditating. So yeah, I tend to say that if you can't do 20 minutes and you feel like it's too much, let's try 15 and we'll get you at 15 minutes twice a day, or 10 minutes at the minimum. And then we start to work and we start to build you up. And I talk to my students and we start to see what the experience is like, how they're feeling outside the meditation, and they stabilize, and then we can start working them up. And that seems to be the best way to do it. And part of the course is giving tips and tricks on situations, and I get it a lot with parents, with kids around and everything like that, and how can they get around that and how can they do that, and it makes a big difference and it can really help.
Well, the information, of course, will be in the video description for anyone who wants to learn more. We'll have all the links. Thank you so much, Sam. I really appreciate you taking the time to go through all this. Yeah, this has been really, yeah, it's been really just wonderful. And again, if you have questions, people watching, you can leave them in the video comments. I'm sure Sam would be happy to answer them there as well. So yeah, thank you to everyone who's watching. Thank you again, Sam. And that's it for today.